we should not unnecessarily deny African carriers requests to exercise fifth freedoms through our countries. We have done that in Nigeria. There's no African airline that has made any demand on us that we have not prompt because that is on my table. I'm sorry, I don't consult the civil servants. I approve immediately.
Hello, African Planet viewers, and welcome to Lomé in Togo. One African sky up is the agenda that we're working towards. No doubt, Nigeria has been extremely active, and I'm very excited to be joined by the Minister of Aviation from Nigeria because there's a lot going on.
Yes, absolutely. We have made tremendous progress on two fronts, on the front of infrastructure and, of course, in terms of policy direction, so a very clear policy direction in the last 3 or 4 years or so. In terms of infrastructure, we have made the bold decision to refurbish or virtually rebuild our major gateway, which is the Lagos Airport. Lagos accounts for about 63% of the air traffic that comes into Nigeria. And so by all standards, it's our major gateway. We have about 5 active international airports now. We just added 2 more airports to the 5, 2 more international airports to the 5. We upgraded them more or less, because they have always existed anyway, but we just upgraded 2 more to full international airports. That makes about 7 international airports, 2 just coming on stream, and about 32 airports on the whole in the whole country. Oh, wow. Now, beyond all of this, beyond the 7 international airports, full international airports, we also have the airports we use for Hajj operations. So by all standards, once in a year, we also use some of these other airports as international gateway for the Hajj operations, the special operations for the Muslim pilgrims that go to Saudi Arabia. We have a large, very large country in terms of aviation activities. However, for the Lagos Airport, because it's our major gateway, and we built it in 1977, so nearly 50 years now old. It was modeled after the Schiphol at that time, but Schiphol has since moved on in terms of expansion and all of that, but we remained on the same spot for nearly 50 years. And when it was built, the capacity that was projected was maybe under 1 million passengers, but today we're doing close to 20 million passengers. Passenger traffic, overwhelmed the infrastructure. But now we made a bold decision. The president budgeted about $500 million, which he has released to a Chinese company to virtually rebuild, the airport, and they have moved to sites. And so, in terms of, building a major infrastructure, we're doing well. Then, of course, we are doing a couple of other things with the other airports. We are resurfacing the runways. We are also looking at our navigational equipments, our total radar coverage of Nigeria, which of course entails upgrading our navigational equipment across Nigeria. The president has made about $40 million available for that. And so we are working very, very, very hard to also achieve that. We're working with some major OEMs, across the world to upgrade our navigational equipment. So on the infrastructure front, we may not be the best, but we are not the worst. Now, on the policy front, that's one arm of the question. The second arm is on the policy front in terms of our policy direction. In the last few years, we have tried to, restore confidence in our aviation ecosystem in terms for the leasers and the financiers, the creditors. We, of course, had to domesticate the Cape Town Convention. Not only that, we made sure they are part of the practice direction of the court, practice directions of the court, so that the judges are, being instructed to fully apply the Cape Town Convention in every case that comes before them having to do with repossession of aircraft. Not only that, we also had to tweak our irrevocable deregistration export request authorization called IDERA, which requires that after, within 5 days when there's a request for repossession, the regulator grants those that request. Now, that is not the end in itself, but it was the means to an end. What is the end in itself? The end in itself is to ensure that we get aircraft into Nigeria in terms of modernizing our fleet, upgrading our fleet, and ensuring that the private operators have easy access to more competitive acquisition of aircraft. Now, that has led us to float the Nigerian aircraft leasing company. That's the first in Africa that we have to float an aircraft leasing company, because over the decades we've relied on aircraft leasing leasing companies in Europe and America and other parts of the world. But now we are having a fully private sector financed leasing company. Now, this leasing company will be fully privately funded, like I said, but government has a small equity there. What is government's role in having that small equity? Government gives a sovereign backing, a sovereign guarantee to the transactions coming into the aircraft leasing company. And what is the guarantee? The guarantee is because of the Cape Town Convention. That's the guarantee of repossession. So government has all the instruments of force in terms of customs and immigration, and of course the regulator, the NCAA. So government has all the instruments of coercion to get an aircraft out of the country in 2 minutes if it wants. So when government gives its own guarantee, you mean that government is then committed to protecting those assets. And there's no better guarantee than government itself, not private people. Government itself committing to protect the equipment coming into the country. That is the type of guarantee that government gives under that transaction. And so we are floating it now. It's going to be exciting, not only for Nigeria, but for the whole of West African region, and then ultimately for the Central African region. But then everything is coming together at a very beautiful moment, because at this same time, the AFDB decides to come up with its own integrated aviation program for Africa. That is so beautiful. And then because of all of this innovation, my passion for it, AFDB looks at me and says, hey, come on, you are going to be our ambassador for this program for the whole of Africa, because we are clear-sighted as to where we are going. We are clear-sighted as to the next step, big step Africa needs to take in order to compete with the rest of the world. So this is an African dream. Because really, for the African Development Bank and even the Afri-Exim Bank, for over these years, when they tried to, transform Africa in terms of trade and investment and, tourism, you cannot transform Africa without connecting Africa. You have to connect Africa. The African Continental Free Trade Area has not fully taken off. Why? Because I need a visa to go to my fellow country, African country. Because I cannot just, jump on a plane and go to the other capital of an African country. I have to go through, sometimes I have to go to Europe to come into Africa. If I know, for example, that it's very easy to go to the neighboring country or 2 countries away, and I can go and come back the same day and all of that, the next likelihood is that I'm going to take my family there for holiday. Yeah. It makes it easy for me. The next likelihood is I'm going to start a business there. I'm going to get business partners there. The other likelihood is that I know that there are some crops and food crops, and I can export into my country at very, very, in terms of ease of logistics. I'll go there and bring them and sell. So it's the precursor. It's the precursor to trade, investment, tourism, when you have free movement and easy movement within a region. And that is what Europe has achieved in terms of, single sky, the Schengen, the first did the Schengen visa, easy movement within Europe. And then there's hardly any capital in Europe that is not linked to the other. The worst you have is one stop in terms of flights. 1 stop or 2 stops, you get to the other, in the other capital. But here in Africa, we have to take 2 days at times, or 1 full day, 48 hours to get to the next country. So the point I'm making in all of this is that the development banks in Africa, they have decided to come back to the basics, which is, first of all, before we talk about trade, before we promote, let's connect Africa first. And that is what they are doing now. They are making funds available for fleet renewal, fleet modernization, and for the connectivity of African region. And then this is at a time when Nigeria is also coming to the party. We decided to do a leasing company. So we are the first country in the whole of Africa to sign an MOU, with the African Development Bank in terms of its leasing integrated program. Aviation integrated program for Africa. We are the first country to sign, and we are really, really pushing this initiative. We're trying to bring other African countries into the party to, to make them see the benefit of this huge program in Africa.
Sure, it's quite incredible. Talk to me about the safety standards. Everybody's talking about their safety ratings. What is Nigeria's safety rating?
The highest in the history of Nigeria since 1960, when we got independence. ICAO just finished its safety audit in Nigeria, and we are happy to report that we got 91.4%. Before now, the highest we got was 75 or 73 or thereabouts over the years. But under our leadership, by the grace of God, we have 91.4%. That is very high, because sometimes they accuse us of over-regulating, but it's better to over-regulate than under-regulate. because of lack of infrastructure in Africa. So we have to overregulate because we can't just, drag our plane to an MRO, within Africa. The MROs are not there. In the whole of West and Central Africa, there are no MRO for wide bodies that we can use. There are some for narrow bodies, but not really for wide bodies. So we don't have enough of these overhaul facilities.
Are you looking at establishing?
That, of course, it comes with a package with the AFDB. That's the first. You can't bring aircraft into a country or into a region or into a continent without first of all telling the people that you have to put a base to repair these aircrafts here, to overhaul them, to even do basic C checks. We can't start. Some of our aircraft, they go abroad and line up for 2 months to just be dragged into a facility to a simple C check. They wait for 2 months. When that can be done under 1 week in other parts of Europe and America, that's the kind of problem we face in Africa. So we have to up our games in that. So all of these, there's no silver bullets in terms of reforming aviation in Africa. Everything has to come together at the same time. Infrastructure, human capacity development, which is part of the package of AFDB. You have to train, the engineers, the pilots, the captains, and all that. Infrastructure, fleet renewal, MROs. They have to come together at the same time, because you see, even in terms of transforming most of our terminals in Africa into transit hubs, you cannot develop also these terminals. You cannot develop this aviation ecosystem without changing them to transit hubs, proper transit hubs. The whole of the crowd that goes through Rwanda now, Kigali, they are not using Kigali as their terminal point. They are transiting through Rwanda air. The same thing with Morocco, Casablanca. The same thing with Egypt, Cairo. Of course, we all know Addis Ababa. Addis Ababa, 90% of those passengers you see in Addis Ababa, they are not coming to Ethiopia. They are transiting through Addis Ababa. So for you to attract the traffic and the activities, these hubs have to be proper transit hubs.
So talking about raising revenue, let's touch on your airport taxes and fees. I know it's a touchy...
One of the highest in Africa, I do agree. I agree. I know I'm on the spot now. But I'm happy to be on the spot because it has made us sit up, These taxes and fees, we met them on the ground. It's not our doing. So, but government is a continuum. So we inherited them and we take ownership of them. Now we have done something bold. The president has said, look, this is the first knee-jerk reaction. The president said, look, reduce 30%, first of all the fees. Before we begin to look at which ones are obsolete, which ones we can write off and all that, a small committee is being set up for that. But don't take note, it is not within the powers of the aviation minister or transport minister alone, because these are, we are not the owners of our country. So the tax authorities have to be involved, the Minister of Finance has to be involved, maybe customs and immigration, all of those will have to be involved. That is why it's not within if it were within my power, I would have just written it off. But then we have to look at the tax authorities who also want to raise revenues and, and so on and so forth. So we're looking at that now. But like I said, the president has, quickly said, look, 30%, I'm sure you saw the news everywhere, 30% of all the, fees and taxes that the airlines will have to pay, we have to write them off for now before we look at the whole, complete solution to it. So,
talk to me about your air cargo strategy, because obviously that's equally as important. Moving goods is just as important as moving people.
We have just signed an MOU with the Dalit Group in Dubai. Mm-hmm. The Dalit Group, one of the biggest, cargo groups, that they also handle that of the UAE. And then we are developing what they call the Advanced Cargo Information System to further develop our cargo traffic. That's one. The second one is that we have new cargo terminals we built all over the country. There are 7, but 5 has been completed. What do we want to do with that? We have invited bids from private people because government cannot run some of these things efficiently. Yeah. Because you need equipment, you need coolers, you need, processors and all that inside this, So we are overwhelmed with applications from the private sector now, who want to take over this cargo, terminals and develop them on the PPP basis with government. Nigeria is one of the biggest agricultural producing countries in Africa. And so we have a lot of agro products to export. And so we want to use these major cargo terminals for processing agro products.
All right, so let's also then now come to the crux of why are we sitting face to face here, which is Amazing. SAATM.
Yeah.
Give me a rundown. SAATM, Nigeria, and your thoughts on the rest of Africa.
Most countries in Africa are still paying lip service to SAATM. I know it's going to take years. It took Europe years to get to where they are now because of the whole toga of protectionism. Most of them are still very, very touchy about their jurisdiction. They protect themselves. They don't want to give up their sovereignty as much as possible in terms of aviation activities. And so they have signed. We have 36 countries that have signed now into the fifth freedom rights. We still have about 16 to go. But even the 36 that have signed, they have not still fully implemented it. And there's also a corollary to that. I told my colleagues that it's not only aviation activities. You have to also bring in the interior ministers too and the foreign affairs ministers. For us as Nigeria, we're committed to SAATM. I'm aviation minister, so I'm speaking from the very pinnacle of, where decisions are made. I am the one that grants the rights, the freedom rights, the fifth freedom rights, and I have granted every single one that has come before me, and more are coming. The major reason why you still have this protectionism in Africa is that most of them are still protecting the routes for their own flag carriers. So they don't want competition from other places, other African countries to come and run those routes and then deprive their own flag carriers or their national carrier of revenue. But that's not the right spirit to take, right? So we have to do that. Secondly, is also developing new routes because there are no demands for those routes. I said it yesterday in my panel session, is it a question of the egg that comes before the chicken or the chicken before the egg? I think we need to develop these routes before even the demands will grow. Demand cannot grow for a route when you are not developing the routes. Yeah. So we have to, sometimes it takes some losses to develop those routes.
What goes into developing that route? I mean, it's not simply a minister-to-minister interaction. There are other things.
Commercial demands too. Yeah. Commercial demands also come into. A friend of mine said when he wanted to start one route in Africa, the first time he advertised for 2 months, but the first flight, there were only 4 people on the plane, for a 200-seater plane. But he had, they bought the tickets, he had to fly. By the 3rd month, he was oversold. So it takes time to develop a route. The commercial demands are there, the SAATM issues are there, the political will is also there to bring together to develop those routes also.
Are you looking at putting in a national flag carrier?
Well, not one sponsored by the government, because we know now, and we are bold enough to say it, that it is difficult for a government to run an airline successfully. With all the bureaucracy and the politics and everything, you cannot, no government, it's difficult in Africa, can run a national airline successfully without insulating it entirely to be run as a commercial venture, just like Ethiopian Air now and all that. Over the years, but initially it was run as a government venture. It's still owned by government, but it's run as a commercial entity, fully commercial entity now. And that's pretty difficult to do, to insulate it entirely from politics.
Nigeria, over the next 6 months, what are we going to be expecting to see?
We're going to be expecting, first of all, the fully functional leasing company, because we're just at the cusp of registering it. So we're going to see a lot of activities in that regard. Yeah. We're going to see a lot of SAATM activities. Yeah. So we're going to review a lot of our BASAs from with other African countries. We are fully compliant. But the ones that we have BASAs with that are not fully compliant, we're going to call them on the table and say, look, listen, can we then look at our BASAs again and make sure the BASAs are fully fifth freedom compliance, in line with the Yamoussoukro decision and the principles of SAATM.